Brought to you by Parliwomen, Parliwomen in Session is a series of conversations with female leaders and advocates. We discuss history, current affairs, and opportunities with the aim of providing awareness on issues that affect women's participation in the Malaysian political sphere.
Hi everyone, welcome back to our sixth episode for Parliwomen's podcast, Parliwomen in Session. This time around, we will be doing something a little bit different. Two of our Parliwomen members will be hosting for today. So with that being said, hi, I'm Irdina, your co-host.
Hi, I'm Jeannie, and I will be co-hosting with Izzana today. So this series encompasses discussion with our fellow influencer sisters to share their stories, struggles, and passions in a world written by men. Last month, we talked to Miss Harsha about breaking bias and gender stereotypes in politics. We hope you enjoy her amazing story throughout her journey as much as we did.
To kickstart the next episode for the year, let us welcome our guest, Miss Izzana Saleh. A little bit of introduction for Ms. Izzana. She is the co-founder and the global president of Project Girls for Girls. Project Girls for Girls is a Harvard Kennedy School-born program by a group of postgraduate female leaders from all across the globe, including Ms. Izzana, as they realize that women globally are being held back from attaining their full potential in leadership. Together, they strive to bridge this gap through Project Girls for Girls.
As many of us young women progressing further into our futures, having leadership skills can help us in our careers and even in our daily lives. So it is crucial that every girl is empowered with role models to follow in their footsteps. So without further ado, welcome Miss Izzana Saleh. Thank you for being here today with us. Can we start with introduction of yourself and a little bit sharing about what leadership means to you?
Hi, Irdina and Janine. Thank you so much for having me and also Girls for Girls here today in your session. We absolutely love the work that you do at Parliwomen, so it means a lot to us to be here to share our experience along with your experiences as well. So a little bit about me. My name is Izzana. I am the co-founder and current global president for Girls International. We are executing our mentorship initiative around 26 countries. We have thus far graduated 10,000 mentees, trained 1,000 mentors, 1,005 like that. And we are extremely excited to keep on growing. I believe Jining asked me what leadership means to me. I believe there are many different definitions and many different experiences of leadership, right? But for me, it's the art of building trust with people, commonly understood as followers, right? But for me, it's like people, your comrades towards a specific goal, a true north, that has a positive impact on your community. So being able to rally people together towards a specific goal. So for example, in Girls for Girls, our goal is to be able to build more young women who are interested in leadership and, importantly, will take that action towards their own leadership. And why I say their own is because there's 4 women here, and each of us have our own calling. Each of us have our own path. It's not going to be the same because we're not meant to be the same thing, but we are definitely meant to support each other in this journey of ours.
That's really great, Miss Izzana. I think you've already told us on what exactly Girls for Girls, your organization strives for. So right now we'll move on to the first part of our podcast, which is your personal journey. So our question is, how did you and your peers establish Project Girls for Girls?
So to be honest with you, you'd really be surprised at what a simple coffee conversation, an honest one, where it can bring you in life, because that's essentially how Girls for Girls started. We were a group of girlfriends, classmates, comrades, because we all specialized in women in leadership some way, somehow. And we were having a conversation in between our classes during our Masters in Public Administration program. But you know, when you're with each other, ask good questions, right? And a colleague of mine, right now, one of our co-founders, she asked, what are some of the issues that women have in your respective countries? And present at that conversation in the year 2016 was currently who our co-founders are, and we're from Malaysia, China, India, Iceland, Uganda, Oman, Mexico, US. Well, yes, correct. That's 9 of us. So you imagine we're from all over the world, but after that hour-long conversation, we realized that regardless which part of the world we're from, regardless whether we were a developing or developed nation, we all had the same issue when it came to women's space, an overlapping issue of lack of representation of women leaders. Whether, like in Malaysia, for me, I brought up the fact that we didn't have and we still don't have enough women leaders in politics. And in other countries, even those which have a smaller gender gap compared to ours, they don't have enough in spaces like C-suite level, for example, right? They might have many in politics, but in C-suite level, in businesses, in entrepreneurship, not enough. So what we decided to do was, obviously, when you're in such an environment, and the questions that we ask each other is, what can we do? And what that means is not to point fingers at anyone else, but if we're the ones asking the questions, we're the ones bringing up this problem statement per se, then when we look around each other and looking at the resources we have, the network we have, the contacts we have, what can we do if we pull all these together and impact a specific area of the solution we talked about, right? And that's as much as any of us can do. What resources do we have? Does it match the problem statement that we're thinking about? Then let's try to do something. We're not going to try and impact every part of all the issues that we see, but we were very specific. We felt like we could help pool our resources when it came to knowledge or bringing women leaders together, mobilizing them so that they can influence the next generation. That we felt we could do, and we wanted to create a program that was digitally agile. So between the co-founders, between our professors, our selected Harvard professors who were interested to support and create materials for us at this program, we came up with Girls for Girls, alhamdulillah. And today we managed to launch on 25th of May 2017, and today we're 6 years later. It's growing, and we're constantly still looking for like-minded women to partner up with, to set up in different countries. And we're seeing impact slowly but surely.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Izzana, for sharing your journey with us. So may I ask, what are the challenges that you still face when it comes to pursuing your organization?
I guess this is the boon and the bane, right? We are a not-for-profit organization, so that means that financially we're very lean. We run on volunteers' time, their desire to build this society organization together because we all have the same goal. But because we're a not-for-profit, its growth stage and its ability to be sustainable is very different than a for-profit business. So not to say that it's not doable, it is extremely doable. We just have to pivot and know when to pivot and choose different tools at the right time. So having run this organization within Malaysia on a global level, I do see at different points, I do see that I need to quickly recognize, we have moved out of startup bootstrapping phase. We have to use different tools now. And then now we've moved into a different growth phase. We have to bring in different types of people. We have to partner up with different kinds of organizations because there's different gaps now, So I guess the challenge there is recognizing when to pivot and what tools to use so that we can still maintain our impact and be sustainable in a long run. That's the goal.
That's really great, Ms. Izzana. I feel that challenges are unavoidable, especially when you and your co-founders, your friends are running an organization as big as this. And it's already been 6 years, so hopefully it will be going on till forever.
Hopefully we get there until our goal is met. But to be honest with you, I feel like challenges are something that the women in our team accept because they love the growth that comes with the challenge, right? It's always a good problem to have if you have people who want to join. If you, oh my gosh, there's too many things to do. These are all good problems to have, right? Which means that we can grow, we can get more people on our journey. But having said that, the end goal of G4G, of course, is to impact as many women as possible through the program. But eventually, the big goal at the end of the day is to make sure that organizations like ours need not exist anymore. And I'm happy to unpack that a little bit more with you later at the end of this conversation.
Okay. For the second part of this podcast, I think we would get straight to that, and it encompasses on what is leadership to you, to me, to basically all women around the world, young girls. And there's this common I wouldn't say a misconception, but there is this perception that only some people are born for leadership whilst others are not. So in your opinion, as a well-experienced leader yourself, why does Project Girls for Girls believe that every girl has the potential to be a leader?
I feel that leadership is honed. Certain skills are honed. Of course, how high you go and all of that depends on rizki or luck or fate, whichever you wish to believe based on what you subscribe to in life. But I feel that we can learn certain skills. So for example, if we are talking about the ability to negotiate, some leaders, it's very important for them to be able to negotiate trade agreements, for example, right? If you're in the UN, for example. And there are a lot of frameworks around that that you can learn, but that is at a very high level. But what if somebody a little bit more junior, you want to get into a better position in your office? You got to be able to negotiate better with your bosses or the decision makers in your company or the board of directors. And there are frameworks around that. So those are skills that can be learned so that you're able to get higher in the hierarchy or whatever it is so that you can get into a more higher official leadership position. Other skills, for example, one of the courses that we mentor in is called Ethics and Values in Decision Making, right? And it sounds like a big, very high level conversation. But to be honest with you, what we share in that session is a framework on how to make a decision. There are many things that scare a person about becoming a leader, not just women, but men too. Some of it's like public speaking skills, negotiations, like I mentioned earlier, and also decision making. In fact, people who are have this fear of making decisions, they end up doing what we call analysis paralysis. And even though at the end of it, the result is you don't make a decision, that's actually the worst decision you can make, right? And how we supplement this, how we help train, mentor, provide safe space, role play with our mentees is to be able to show them that there is in fact a framework that they can deploy when, as any leader can tell you, you're stuck between a rock and a hard place and you've got to make a decision. And our mentees who have graduated from our program said that they have deployed our framework in both professional and personal life and has been extremely useful. I mean, we still keep in touch with a lot of our graduates, and it's really wonderful to hear how their salary has grown. As they rise up the ranks, they know how to negotiate the roles, get a bigger scope, get a bigger raise, and they deploy the same frameworks that we share with them. We try to ensure that in G4G, we have what you call a flat hierarchy mindset. And this is done intentionally because we want young women to feel like they have a safe space to share, to test, to try, to succeed, to fail, to make a mistake, whatever it is, so that we are honing ourselves to become the diamond that we are, right? And these things all can be learned. Maybe, this what you say, stereotype or bias, or however you placed it earlier, Irina, perhaps that comes from a slightly bigger issue like culture. Or in certain cultures, women cannot be leaders. But these are all societal constructs which are created by people, and therefore people can disrupt it as well. We can change it. We can shift the mindsets of the next generation so that societal constructs like that, which initially place some people in positions of, that person cannot be a leader, shifted. And then they become, yes, they can be a leader. You just got to be having the right conversations, be with the right people, go through the right training, keep that persistence going. And for example, we had a session yesterday, and one of the things I had shared with the mentees in our breakout circle was understand your purpose. Until and unless you understand your purpose and the work you do, whether you're in a for-profit business or you're in politics or whatever it is, until and unless you understand your purpose, why you want to be in this specific space of leadership, that's going to be hard for you to continue, because life throws us curveballs and difficulties and all those things. And we need to be able to hang on to our purpose, find motivation in that, and just keep on going. So to answer your question, TLDR, as they say, I believe that many of us are meant for leadership. We just have very different obstacles to beat.
Thank you, Ms. Izzana, for the advice just now. I think it's very crucial that girls are nurtured from a young age in a supportive and empowering environment to exude confidence through leadership. However, like Izzana said just now, not every one of us is born for leadership, since some of us might be facing some problems in our young age. So we would like to know, how do you become the person you are today, and what keeps you going throughout the journey? Yeah.
I'll answer the second question first, if that's okay, Janine. What keeps me going is realizing, just a bit before we set up Girls for Girls, I realized that at this phase in my life, my purpose and my desire is really about helping young women pursue their fullest potential, specifically in leadership. Because I grew up in many different places, having a lot of exposure to very empowering environments, but I also had a lot of exposure to highly disempowering culture. And growing up in a very confusing sense of exposure, like, wait, what's going on? What is acceptable? What is not? And then I was overseas for different periods of my life, learning about different cultures and the value system, Eastern, Western, what about yourself? What works for you? And a lot of trials, success and failures on my own accord. And so a combination of that, and life has a really strong way of bringing humility to us, and realizing, okay, we all have a moral obligation to make this world, quote unquote, a better place, right? But we can't do everything. You're doing your work through Parliwomen to getting awareness and exposure and getting the voices out there. And my purpose and my desire is about helping young women get there, because I met so many young women who have great potential. Yes, some I saw rise through the ranks or shot up like a shooting star, but I saw also so many who had great potential but couldn't get there because of culture. That's exactly what we shared earlier, your place is in the kitchen. I've heard that with my own ears, sometimes to me, sometimes to others. But because I was also exposed to empowering families or cultures, I had a problem that I couldn't reconcile this. And I had to quickly learn what was right and what was wrong. And it requires a lot of pushing back on the generational cultures. Each generation has their own, right? And what patriarchy looks like for different people. Sometimes when we say patriarchy, we think it's the men who's pushing, well, women can't do this, women can't do that. But actually, that's not a fact at all. Especially in Malaysia, a lot of the people who keep perpetuating patriarchy are the women, because it's through no fault of their own. It's just the way the culture is. It's inherited, culture is inherited, conversation, or it's how it's been done. But then, so I asked my girls to just have a very simple, in a totally non-fighting tone, ask yourself, question. Perhaps it's how it's always been done, but is it right in today's context? So it's always good to be curious. It's always good to challenge status quo. And I hope that we always have that curiosity to challenge things, so that we recognize, oh, what is right and what is wrong for us in today's day and age. Now, going back to the first question you asked, Jining, How did I become the person I am today? I think we are all same, the four of us here in this conversation. I think we're all just trying to be a better person today than we were yesterday. So whatever experiences, I see you nodding. So, and I know many will resonate with this. We're all just trying to do our best in this world today. If we succeed, alhamdulillah, that is great. But there are also days where we make mistakes. There are also days where we are frustrated. And all we want to do and all we should strive for is to be better than the version we were yesterday. So I hope that helps. It's very hard to say, oh, how do you become the person? We're just the sum of all our experiences, the good, bad, the ugly. But all we can do is just strive to be a better person today than we were yesterday.
Thank you, Ms. Izzana. That was a very nice way of putting it. It's very personal. So earlier you mentioned about generational cultures, and you also mentioned Malaysia and how it is sad to see that there is still that kind of culture in Malaysia, that women are also not being able to, it's not their fault, like you said, but they aren't able to like have this self-confidence to take on leadership roles and just being in the political sphere, for example. So our question to you is, why is it important that there are more women in the political sphere, especially in Malaysia?
You mentioned political sphere, right?
Yeah, and because a part of Parliwomen's focus is to encourage women's representation in the political sphere. So if you could just give an opinion of yours.
Sure. I think that's an excellent question, tied to me earlier saying that I think it's great what you're doing here. I think that, politicians are our leaders in a certain sense. They help to manage and problem solve, whether it's in a local, state council position or in federal space as parliamentarians. They are bringing the voices of the constituency that they represent into the parliament where laws are made, where major decisions that govern our country is made, right? So we need people in there who's representing us, who A, look like us, because then B, they have the same or somewhat similar experiences that we do. And therefore, because they're able to walk in our shoes, or we have all walked in that same path, they're able to make better decisions for people like us. I saw a recent cartoon that showed a table full of dogs sitting there in suits, like, about to a decision-making table, you can tell. And the topic there was said, now we convene the lawmaking for feline community. So that's precisely it, right? If a bunch of dogs are making decisions for a bunch of cats, that makes no sense. And very similarly, over here, I'm not saying we're dogs and cats, but you get what I'm saying, which is that you need people who look, sound, have experienced life the way you have, because we're all different, to make the policies and laws for people like us. Whether it's race or religion or economic income bracket, you need representation. DEI is such a crucial topic today, and political entities, government agencies that don't see the importance are at a huge loss. The world is challenging enough as it is today. Let's not make a loss by not being intentional about who represents us at Parliament.
So thank you for answering such a good question. So since we don't have much time left, can you share with us in a short time that what are your hopes for Malaysia's future in female leaders?
Sure. And this is tied to what I mentioned earlier. My serious hope is that at some juncture in our generation, in our lifetime, our goals are met. And what do I mean? I mean like having some parity in politics. What that means is 50% representation female candidates, for example, in the upcoming state election. We want to be able to see representation up there that is equal to the representation down here. What is the breakdown of our population? We're almost half of the population in Malaysia. And that should be represented in parliament, because then only you'll be able to get something that is statistically correct. So my hope is that at some juncture, when we see that organizations like mine and others that are fighting for gender equality and women empowerment no longer needs to be around. I know it sounds counterintuitive, but we're around because there is a need. But once that need is met, and I hope that it's met in our lifetime, that organizations like ours has no further need to continue.
I think for us, we have just a last question for you, actually, Miss Izzana, and it is because we have ample of time to answer it. The question is, what are some advice that you have for our listeners here today to take on the roles of becoming a leader? And I'm saying this, I mean, as a personal, this is like my personal view as well. I think at least for me, I struggle with having the self-confidence of taking on a role, especially the role of a leader. And if you could share with us any advice that you know to help young women and girls to have this self-confidence and to take the first step towards this.
Sure. So before we jump there, I want to share with you that confidence is one of the biggest concerns why young women, actually people in general, but more so young women, don't raise their hands for a promotion at work or a new role. It is always an issue on the confidence bit. Not to say that there aren't women who are confident or ultra confident, but majority of the reasons behind it is about confidence and delivered in a very similar way that you do. Now that I knew that theoretically before, and I've had conversations with friends or contemporaries, and I realized that I know this much more after running this program for the last 6 years. I hear this every time. So what I want to share with you is, first and foremost, realize that you're not alone. Realize that this is a feeling that many, many, many young women have. And it makes sense, right? We're all starting up somewhere. You're always looking at a leadership position which is further higher than where we are presently. And so there's always a little bit of concern, and that's a fair start. But what we ask is, take a quick stock initially, or what I like to call a baseline assessment, right? Understand where you are. What are actually your goals, your dreams? If you could not fail, what would be your goal, right? And like, really think about it. If there's no way of failing, if there is no problems, no obstacles, what is that big, hairy, audacious goal, the BHAG, that you would go for? Okay, and write that down. And then also understand, what are your limiting beliefs? What are the things in your mind, or also in real life, what is holding you back? Because it is very important for us to have a clear assessment. What is it that is holding us back? From where we want to go? Because we've already identified our goal. We need to identify what are our limiting beliefs. And from there, and write this down, because 50% of getting your mind to wrap your head around this concept is being clear about the situation. And how to be clear is to write that down. Once you know your goal, and once you have a clear idea about your limiting beliefs or the actual limitations in the real world, it could be finances, it could be time, it could be 100 other things. We don't know. Write it down. And then try and understand two other things. One is, where can you go that will help you fill those gaps that will get you to your goal just now? If your goal is about being a political leader, for example, because this is a conversation Parliwomen is having, and then when you assess yourself, oh, I haven't even joined a political party. Or maybe take one step back before that. I don't even know what this party stands for, but I've never volunteered for any of their program. Forget about that. I haven't even gone for any of the program. So you need to be able to really list out the next steps essentially, right? But you can't without knowing where you want to go, what's stopping you from getting there. So really list out, okay, if it's political leadership, I should have an idea of which party I want to be in. Do I know what the parties stand for, their values? Can I subscribe to them, or can I represent what it stands for? And then you got to go in, because then you got to learn, how does this party move? How there are so many unwritten rules in political parties because it's about managing people, right? So you got to go, you got to experience from bottoms up, as they say, and that's usually the best way, because you really learn the culture like the back of your hand. But some people's recipe in life, they maybe go straight to a certain point because, maybe you're charismatic and somebody spots a talent. You never know how life turns out. That you got to go with the flow, but you got to start somewhere, right? And if you feel shy, if you feel like you don't have confidence, partner up or be an intern or help or volunteer somebody. Learn from a younger leader who you feel you can resonate with him or her. You can learn these things, right? So the most important thing is to actually start somewhere. And for me, that would be my advice. Take stock and then take steps. Because without knowing what's actually there, and what you need to do, how are you going to take the action, right? Don't let it sit in your head and ruminate. That gets us nowhere. Take stock and then take steps.
All right, thank you, Ms. Izzana. I personally really have learned a lot for the sharing of Ms. Izzana today, and we truly appreciate that the project of GFG existed in this world to help our many girls in the world with their confidence to take up the role of the leaders. So with that, we end our second episode. I would like to thank Ms. Izzana for spending their time with us today. And to those tuning in, remember to follow Parliwomen on Instagram and LinkedIn, where we share our information and updates on our latest endeavors.
Thank you as well, Ms. Izzana, for today's sharing session. For our listeners, catch us next month with another episode of our podcast featuring another inspirational guest. Should you have any insight or input on what you'd like to hear from us next, our DMs are always open. Until then, stay tuned until Parliwomen resumes in the next episode. Thank you for listening.